Hey there, welcome to the Jeff and Heidi Show, where you're going to have the opportunity to listen to and learn from everyday entrepreneurs.
Hello, this is Heidi Anderson from ECI Business Financial Strategies and my co-host Jeff Heggie from Jeff Heggie Coaching. And we are excited to introduce you today to Betsy Skinner, who is just an amazing outsourced administrative assistant, for lack of a better word. And I actually met her on Cindy Gordon's show, and Cindy's been on our show before, and you know, it was like a neat interaction, and we just kind of connected, and I thought she was delightful, and that people would love hearing her story. And so without any further ado, here is Betsy.
Hello, it's so nice to meet you. Thank you both for having me on the show. This is a new adventure in my world, so I'm honored to be a part of it. So as far as me, I am an empathetic powerhouse, which has its pros and cons. Most people think of empathy and they think, oh my goodness, that is a weakness, but I'm learning to turn it into a skill that not everyone realizes the full potential of. When you're a business leader and you have to hustle it and cover all of the bases, and you have all these balls in the air and you're afraid to drop them, you've also got to maintain the calm in the storm each day. You need to make sure you've got all those bases covered. And if you have communication and the willingness to delegate, that's where I come in. I love being the right-hand partner in your entrepreneurial journey to make sure that you get done what you want to get done each day.
That's awesome. Do you want to go into a little bit more detail on what exactly you do as a virtual assistant and some of the things that you take on for entrepreneurs?
Absolutely. At this point, I haven't niched down yet. So I look at myself as a higher level generalist of sorts. I really do meet with each of my clients, and each client has a unique situation. I've got some that need a little extra help with their social media marketing and management. I've got some who strictly use me for proofing, editing, copywriting. I've edited books before. That's a fun one because honestly, editing and proofing is one of my favorite tasks. So I love that. I help out with invoicing. Payroll is not my jam. I do not like payroll, but I don't mind a little light bookkeeping and helping people stay on task with making sure their cash flow is going in a positive direction. I can edit along with the editing and proofing presentations, whether it's PowerPoints or whatever they're trying to get out there. I want to make sure their message is well worded, articulate, and in line with their brand.
Well, I think it's interesting that you said you were an empath in a way, because as long as you don't absorb other people's energy, that you can.
That can be a challenge.
Yeah. If it's good, then that's okay. If somebody's in a bubbly mood and you can absorb that, that's awesome. But just the fact that, like you're saying, when you're editing and you're having to take their words and make them sound a little bit better, but with that empathetic nature, you can probably do it and still make it sound like them without changing it too much. Am I making sense?
Absolutely. You don't want to take away their words. You want to help them find their voice and be confident about putting it out there. I mean, I call my day a win when my clients feel better about themselves, more confident about what they're bringing to the table for their clients.
What's the biggest benefit to your clients of being able to have a virtual assistant?
Having more time in their day. When you think about your to-do list, think about which tasks you really like to do. Think about which tasks take you the most time. And that's when you get together with a virtual assistant and say, hey, this is where I'm struggling. This is where I'm getting bogged down and really dreading facing this. How can you help me out? Can you do these? And you just delegate. You know, if you've got a great virtual assistant who's self-motivated, then you just get it off your plate. They let you know when it's done. And as long as you've got that free-flowing communication between you two, it usually works pretty smoothly. There is a learning curve. There's some time for training sometimes, but that's why there's the virtual assistant who goes on a project-based platform of their business model. And there's ones like me who enjoy the longer term relationship. It helps me be a little bit more telepathic with predicting my clients' needs if we have a little bit longer time to get to know each other.
Right.
So I can learn their style and learn their voice and help support them in ways they may not have even thought of.
Yeah, that makes sense. So tell us about your journey. Tell us how did you become this?
This was not planned in any way, shape, or form.
It usually isn't.
Absolutely not. I graduated from college thinking I'm going to work in a Japanese embassy. I'm going to be a diplomat. It's going to be great. I love different cultures. That is not how it shook out at all. I did move to DC. I did work in politics and realized I don't really want to base my career on election cycles and the clients that are attached to each realm of election cycles. I don't want to raise kids in DC. So I thought, ooh, I'll be even more altruistic and work for an international adoption agency. So I completely switched career paths. That was during the economic downturn of 2008. I loved it, except from that empathetic side of things, I didn't think about if I'm the one telling families they get to adopt, I'm also the one telling families they cannot adopt. And for every family I got to tell, yay, you get to adopt, there were multiples that I had to say no to, and that just tore me up. That was rough. So my husband is an elementary school teacher. So it was an easy transition for him to switch jobs, switch schools. So we decided to move back to the Midwest, Springfield, Missouri, in the land of free parking, affordable housing. People say hi to you. I don't have to pay a parking meter to go to the grocery store anymore. That's a win. And I got a job for a fantastic nationwide accounting firm. Again, didn't plan that. And I basically started from the ground up as receptionist and ultimately was the executive assistant to the top 6 executives for the last 5 years, which was great because those executives were based in 3 geographic locations. The CEO was in Indianapolis, the chief legal counsel was in Kansas City. The other 4 guys were here in Springfield, Missouri, but traveled a significant amount. So it is not new to me to support executives or business leaders virtually. I just didn't realize at the time that that's what I was doing. So, but when you have 6 bosses, it can be a little bit challenging balancing those personalities. And I decided that it would be to my benefit to make an exit from that particular situation and strike out on my own. Then I get to work with whoever I want to. I still get to serve executives. I still get to be at home, be a mom to my kids, have the flexibility I love. And the only downside to that is I'm still trying to figure out how to be an entrepreneur in the most efficient way. I know how to be an executive assistant, but boy, do I miss that IT department so bad.
Well, it's interesting because you say, well, you know, it wasn't planned, but every little thing you did, every big thing that you did, and actually none of them were little, built up all the tools that you need to be where you are, except for obviously the IT part. And that's easily outsourced too, right?
We're working on that.
Yeah. But at least that's something that you can hire somebody else to do, right? Or,
that's why I'm the go-to person. Yeah. My clients have an issue. I don't necessarily fix the problem. I just help them find a way to solve the problem.
Right.
So
looking at your clientele now, are they all state-based? I know, like you said, you had talked about working possibly in an embassy. I know you taught English in Japan. Was that right?
I did have a side job teaching English, but at that time was a junior in college. So I went to school.
Okay.
I was an exchange student living on my own, paying my own bills. I wish I were fluent in Japanese. I am not, but I still have family that live near Tokyo. So it's kind of nice to chit chat with my niece who's trying to learn English.
Very cool.
So, yeah.
So are all your clients right now in
My
the
clients,
US?
yes, currently they are. The great
Okay.
thing about being a virtual assistant is you can market globally. I
Mhm.
haven't reached to that point yet. I have several contacts who are global, but not client wise. With a lot of virtual assistants, you start with the people you know. Ironically, my first client was an ex-coworker from the accounting firm I used to work for,
Okay.
and he is still
Okay.
a client. It's great. So you tend to start with who you know and broaden your sphere from there.
Without putting you on the spot and going into too many details,
Mm-hmm.
I know, I mean, as any entrepreneur would want to know, I mean, would love to have a virtual assistant. What's the cost? What is it? If I want to pull someone in as a virtual assistant just to help with some of the minor things and stuff, where do we start?
It's based on what kind of virtual assistant you want.
Okay.
One huge change that is transpiring right now is there's a recently developed association of virtual assistants, and they are trying to standardize how the virtual assistant industry is priced, because right now it is all over the market. You can have a virtual assistant from the Philippines or outsourced abroad for $2 an hour, and that just will not fly in the US market. It varies in the US market from $15, $20 an hour to $60 an hour. If you're of the executive level, it's going to be closer to the higher end of that. But if you're looking at a job board like Upwork or Fiverr, and you just need a one-off job, it can be fairly economical for you. If you're looking for the longer term relationship, you're going to have more of a retainer, monthly ongoing expectation there.
Well,
So
how would they ever standardize that? Because everybody has different levels of skill and
it is different levels of skill, but
and
in general, you have a different niche for every type of virtual assistant.
mm-hmm.
Typically, you have the social media marketing specialists. You have those who specialize in data input. You have the medical virtual assistants who understand all that medical code. I am not that person. So it really is very different for each industry as to what kind of assistant you want. There are agencies who specialize in providing, they outsource so they can provide all of those different services in a one-stop shop. But being an executive virtual assistant is its own niche. It's just more of a higher level generalist.
Right. Yeah, that's
There's not a
okay. I
glamorous way to
want to
say
know how
that.
they could standardize pricing when you have a unique skill set,
It is still generalized, but it's an attempt toward working toward that, because it is challenging to compete globally
Mm-hmm.
when there is no standard. So Melissa Smith started the Association of Virtual Assistants, and she has written a couple of books. One is geared toward the entrepreneurs trying to build their business and have a general sense of how they should do their pricing, and one is geared toward the clients who might look to hire a virtual assistant. And I found her advice extremely insightful.
Oh, good.
So for someone, let's say an executive that may be listening to this show and they're considering hiring a virtual assistant,
Mm-hmm.
what are some of the things, I guess, what are some of the characteristics that you have, and what are some of the things they should be looking at to say, this is what I need in a virtual assistant?
I would say, coming from the empathetic basis I am, personality is number one. If you don't click and you don't communicate well, you're not going to work virtually well together. So it's imperative that you make that initial connection, make sure that you're communicating and that you like talking to one another. With me, it's helpful to me if I can connect on a consistent basis with my clients at least once a week, and usually multiple times. Like once a day is great, just to have that connection, make sure they're feeling good about where they're at and where they want to go. So if you have a virtual assistant who gives you a vibe that they're blowing you off, that's not a good sign.
Right.
You don't want to be a number. So having that relationship is key. I will also say everybody has their own management style. Everybody has their own work style. So having someone that can conform and be flexible to that is helpful. I'm trying to think what would be the best thing to advise. If you're looking for a virtual assistant, you want somebody who's going to listen. I mean, it goes
Right.
along with the communication. It all comes down to the personality, the communication, and their ability to not be micromanaged. It's
Right.
really tough to micromanage a virtual assistant because they are not there. And so many entrepreneurs who are used to employees come at it from the mindset of they want someone there 8 to 5. That's not how virtual assistants typically work. I had a family event yesterday afternoon, so I did a bulk of my work at 11 o'clock last night. So they're not always going to be there in person, and having that expectation, it really does help if it's here's the expectations, here's what the action items are, this is what you need, and then you meet up after to see if there are any edits you need. So making sure you have that dialogue and that open transparency is helpful. You also need to be willing to delegate. And when I say delegate, it's not just this is what I need. It's especially from the executive assistant realm. Are you willing to delegate your access to the tools that you use to do your job? Especially if they're supporting you on behalf of you, if they're in your social media accounts as you, are
Right.
you willing to share that? And there are certain tools that we can use, like LastPass, where you can share your access to something, even if you don't feel comfortable sharing your passwords.
Okay.
So there's ways to get around that and still make sure both parties feel comfortable.
So again, someone that's looking for a virtual assistant,
Mm-hmm.
Where do they start? Like besides if they happen to listen to this show and can get your contact information, you know, if I were just to decide today, I know I need a virtual assistant, where do I start? How do I find you? How do I, you know, what steps do I take?
Like any industry, word of mouth referrals tend to be the most reliable.
Okay.
So ask your fellow entrepreneurs. More and more of them are hiring virtual assistants by the day. If you want to go to a job board, you will get great virtual assistants, but you'll also get the ones that just need one-off jobs. So a place like Upwork.com, especially if you need those one-off jobs instead of a long-term relationship, Upwork, Fiverr, those are great economical resources. If you're looking for a long-term solution, it can be amazing what you'll find when you just Google executive virtual assistant. There are so many independent virtual assistants just like me, and they usually base all of their business off of social media and websites. So if you search Google and you go to executive virtual assistant, I will probably come up somewhere in that list. And if you go to LinkedIn or Facebook and search virtual assistants there, you will have a plethora of options. If you don't have that recommendation to base off of, you're largely going to go to a website where you look at how they present themselves and what testimonials are posted to their website. But ultimately, it usually comes down to scheduling a call with one, seeing how well you can during that first 15 minutes.
Right.
So
And then,
when you're out there, I'm sorry, Jeff. So how do you set yourself apart then if there's so many of them out there, and they could be anywhere? How does Betsy make sure she stands out from the crowd?
In my case, I come from a corporate background, and I generally have gotten along with the baby boomer generation better than the millennial generation. So if you ask me to edit something and you want to put an emoji instead of a period, I'm just straight up telling you, I am not your gal. I insist on using punctuation at the end of every sentence. I don't mind if there's an emoji, but there needs to be punctuation too. So
Betsy Skinner, grammar queen.
exactly. I'm going to provide that safe sounding board for you. So if you need to strategize, if you need to brainstorm, if you need to vent, if you're just overwhelmed and having a bad day, I'm going to be a great listener, calm you down, be that calm in your storm, and prioritize as to, okay, I can handle this. Do you feel comfortable with me taking that on? And we'll move on to make sure you're productive and feeling confident in your day. So
you're also a therapist.
Hence the emotional, empathetic aspect to it. Right. I make no medical claims. So
does it usually start off with just taking a little bit, and as the relationship grows, you take more and more?
It does sometimes. We're still at the downside of COVID is obviously it's a horrible thing. But with COVID came everybody working remotely. So it is so much easier to explain what I do now than it was 4 months ago.
Right.
Everybody, almost everybody, has had a taste of how to work from home, or at least trying to work from home.
Yeah.
So the virtual assistant industry is taking off. Mm-hmm. We're still at the front end of that, but so it's often when someone's looking for a virtual assistant, I've usually been their first virtual assistant. So we have had that, often we've had that initial transition period of take on a project, see how well we work together, then renegotiate from there. You know, if it's a copywriting project, sometimes I will write an example piece for that person. If it's being a full-on executive assistant, one of my most current clients, I provided those services for a month just to see how we did together. And then he decided he wanted another month. And by the third month, he's like, okay, you can automatically bill me from now on. So ideally, that is certainly the ideal from my perspective. But yeah. There is an element of you can't do this unless you have that trust built, and it takes time to build that trust. It starts with communication, but if you don't develop that trust between you, well, it's not going to be long-term.
Like you're saying with the COVID thing, and people are all of a sudden working from home, and they're used to having like direct control over somebody who's sitting at a desk outside their office.
Yes.
And like you said, even then there really has to be trust that, you know, okay, I'm paying you hourly or whatever. Are you, you know, are you actually working for me while you're there, or are you off, you know, playing with your dog or something? Mm-hmm. And at least with a virtual assistant, like you said, it's more of a, you know, here's your project. This is about how much time it should take, and you know whether it gets done or not.
Mm-hmm. So it is all about, we're both adults. We both know what the goals are. I will say I really try to avoid charging hourly, because the more efficient you become at something, the quicker you do it, the less money you make. Right. Mm-hmm. So you're paying for the expertise, not the time. So I would be mindful of that if you're shopping for a virtual assistant.
Right. Yeah. I was going to say, but if they're used to having somebody who they pay hourly, and then they're, you know,
that can be a challenging mindset shift.
But at least, you know, and you know what you're getting, and you know that person, because even when you have somebody sitting there hourly, there's often a lot of time that they don't have enough to do to fill their whole day, but yet they have to sit there.
I think we've all been in positions where we don't necessarily enjoy our role as much as we'd like. Right. So we're not always the most efficient, but.
Right. Now, what about, we talk about this quite often in our mastermind group. especially during COVID, all the different forms of communication in situations like this. What do you use with your clients? You know, right now we're on a Zoom. Do you use Zoom, Slack? What sort of things do you use with your clients to communicate and share things back and forth?
Great question. There are so many options and every client has their preference. I will say I wish I had invested stock in Zoom pre-COVID
No
because
kidding.
it has taken off, and Zoom really is the go-to platform for calls just like this. As far as, and who wouldn't appreciate the face-to-face? Loom is also a great resource, loom.com. It allows you to record yourself, and you can record yourself like this, or you can record yourself going over a presentation or going over an agenda or a to-do list. So if you really are in a different time zone than your assistant, you can record yourself going over line item what you want to get done that day, shoot it to them in an email or text it to them, and they'll click on the link, watch your video. It gives them a chance to watch it again if they need extra reference for learning a new task. So that's an awesome resource. Texting is an option, but when they've got multiple clients and multiple time zones, texting is not always the best from the virtual assistant perspective. I am still a fan of the old traditional email. It's all in one inbox. It's all right there. But Slack, I've used that with some clients. It just depends. Trello is a huge, Asana and Trello and Slack are very popular as well.
Okay, no, that's great. With that Loom, I want to check that out. Is that loom.com?
Correct. Loom.com. Fantastic. It is my favorite new resource I've been exposed to this year.
Excellent.
I don't know that it's a new resource, but new to me.
Yeah, I think it's been around a couple of years. I know we looked at it, and so like you could be doing a PowerPoint, and then you are in a little circle down here in the corner talking.
You can be.
So yeah, and so they're looking at your PowerPoint, and you're walking them through it, but you're just you're on the same screen, like a little picture in picture.
There's different formats of how you can set it up. I've done a complete PowerPoint presentation once where I wasn't on the screen, but I was voiced over in the background.
Yeah.
So I could just click play on the presentation, and, you know, there's lots of different options that you can use it for. But if I'm trying to go over something and really catch somebody and I'm having trouble connecting with a client, sometimes I'll bring up a visual of what the question is and just record a quick Loom video and send it to them. Okay. And then ask, hey, can we get together when you have at your earliest convenience? This is the issue.
Right.
So I'm a visual person, so that helps me.
Okay, excellent. No, thanks for sharing those. Well, probably the most important thing we want you to share is if someone is looking to explore getting a virtual assistant, would love to talk to you, how do people find you?
My email address is Betsy, Betsy, at SkinnerVirtualServices.com. And my website is www.SkinnerVirtualServices.com. I'm always happy to talk with someone just to help them out and give them a little guidance on expectations, whether they're looking to hire me or not, because it is a new industry. And, you know, a rising tide lifts all boats. We need to help each other out and be a team.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much. Appreciate that. One last, are you on social media? Can people find
Absolutely. I can be found on LinkedIn and Facebook.
Okay, perfect. And in our show notes, I'll share all the links for that as well.
Excellent. Hey, thank you.
We want to thank you. It's a very interesting industry. I think there's a lot of entrepreneurs that could really benefit from it. So love having you share this with us today. And I think we'll have a lot of listeners that really appreciate it as well. So
absolutely. If you can't afford in your budget a full-time administrative support person, you get what you put into it. You can just a la carte what you need.
Excellent. Thank you.
Great. Well,
thank you very much for having me. You too.
You bet.
Have a wonderful day.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Hey, thanks for being with us. I hope you enjoyed that episode and you got a lot of value out of it. Please subscribe and make sure you don't miss any future episodes. And please come visit our websites, jeffheggie.com and ecibfs.com. Thanks again for being with us and hope to see you next time.